Welcome back to The Manager, presented by Outlier Sports. I am your host, Gianni Frangella. It's been a minute. It has been some time. A lot of stuff happened since I last did this podcast. Um, just a lot going on in my life. Started school, was out of town for a while, etc., etc. But also, a lot of stuff has happened in the sports world. Today, we're going to be doing something different that I have not done on this podcast yet, and that is talk about literally anything besides NBA basketball. Today, we're going to be talking about NFL football, as we are currently 2 weeks into the NFL season, and we're going to go over it. We will be doing some college football stuff with Outlier in the future, just not today. Today, we're going to strictly talk about NFL football as we are 2 weeks into the season. It is Wednesday, September 17th. I believe the Buffalo Bills play the Miami Dolphins tomorrow night on Thursday Night Football. But we're going to get into it, man. It has been a very interesting 2 weeks through the NFL season so far. Not what I expected in a lot of ways from a lot of players, a lot of teams. And I think everyone has that thing, every year, like, oh man, through 2 weeks, is anything really how anybody expects? But this year really feels different in a way, just like I mean, I'm a big fantasy guy. I did so much research coming into this year, more research than I had ever done. And with that, you get a good idea about what the hype is around certain players, certain teams, certain situations. And a lot of those situations that were coming into the season with a lot of hype have not panned out. Um, it's been very interesting to say the least. First of all, I'm going to make a note. If you're noticing a little bit of a lisp coming in on my end, it's because I just started Invisalign. And I'm only saying that because you're going to notice a lisp. I've already gotten shit from my friends saying, oh, bro, I couldn't tell you started aligners. It's whatever. So, now that that's out of the way, I want to get into a couple of big predictions that I'm going to stand on today. Most people make these predictions at the beginning of the year, but I didn't do that. I was caught up with life. So, my Super Bowl matchup as it stands today, September 17th, 2025, I have the Baltimore Ravens facing off against the Green Bay Packers. I think the Packers look so good, so scary. Their defense is unreal. And frankly, even when they traded for Micah Parsons, I was a little skeptical because I saw certain people, specifically Carson Breber, shout out from Nerd Sesh. I don't even know if I said his name right, but big fan of those guys. He was very high in the Packers, and I remember seeing that and being very skeptical. And the addition of Micah Parsons furthered that feeling of his. And to me, it just didn't make that big of a difference to me. I think Micah Parsons is a great player. I think he got a little bit overpaid, but I didn't see him as a huge mover of the needle. And frankly, whether or not he is what has moved the needle for them, they are serious. They are legit. And from what I've watched with the Eagles, I'm not terribly impressed with them. I don't think the Niners are legit. I just, to me right now, the Packers seem like the most formidable threat in the NFC. In the AFC with the Ravens, I can understand someone's argument of why the Bills should be here, and I mean, I'm not going to be surprised if they are. However, the Ravens had that game week one, and this is not to like diminish the win from the Bills. It was an incredible comeback win. I thought it was so impressive, but I feel like typically the way things go, and we saw this last year, where the Ravens trounced the Bills in the regular season, and then they lost to them in the playoffs. That's kind of what I feel would happen here. I think if they met again, the Ravens lost in such a way that was kind of embarrassing. They lost in such a way that I feel like it would make it a point. It would to emphasize they are better than this team, that they will beat this team, and I think they would beat the Bills. Um, that's just my opinion. I love Josh Allen, and I'd be stoked to see him make the Super Bowl. This is just the prediction I'm standing on today: Baltimore Ravens, Green Bay Packers in the Super Bowl. My dark horse, um, and I guess what you define as a dark horse is to each their own. To me, it's a team that, I wouldn't pick them today, but I would not be surprised if they snuck in there. And to me, this is really a list of one. Um, and that is the Chargers. The Chargers look really impressive through 2 weeks. Justin Herbert is confident. I don't know if that has anything to do with his newfound relationship with Madison Beer, but he looks very confident. Quentin Johnson has, new life has been breathed into him. I mean, he's catching deep balls, getting touchdowns. He's been really impressive. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about him later on. But the Chargers look really good. Khalil Mack did have a gruesome injury to his elbow, but the reports on it kind of sound like he could be back. Um, you know, I mean, in the next month or so, because he got ruled out for this week against the Broncos, but he's not on an injury list. Which I mean, I'm no doctor, but when I saw that in real time, I thought he was not going to be back playing football anytime soon, anytime this year probably. But who knows? We'll see what happens. Hoping for the best for him, but I think the Chargers just look super impressive. They're very confident, and as a Broncos fan, we played them this week. I do not expect us to win, and I will get to that Broncos Colts game later on. But that's who I have in my dark horse category. As far as overachievers, teams that I think are playing. Maybe I'm gonna clarify this as I go team by team. I have the Colts in here, and that's simply because they've had two. I mean, I think really impressive wins. Do I think that's truly reflective of how good of a team they are in the season they're going to have? No, I don't. And this is not sour grapes coming from a Broncos fan. Um, I mean, they've been really impressive. They've had really good wins. Jonathan Taylor looks like he's found that same version of himself that we saw in 2021. I just, I'm skeptical to jump on the bandwagon because a lot of the things that people said about this team coming into the year, I still feel are relatively true. They are not, you know, they do not have a surplus of talent. And I think that could catch up to them at some point. And I could see them winning their division because it is an incredibly weak division. But I don't see them being some type of formidable contender threat. Um, and maybe nobody's saying that about them. But I just feel as of right now they're playing above their heads. Um, Second or next on this list I have is the Arizona Cardinals, who I guess my definition of them being an overachiever is a little different because I don't know if I'd necessarily say they're playing above their heads. They're 2-0, but they played the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers. Two of, I mean, arguably the two worst teams in the NFL. And they didn't really win all that confidently over either of them. But nonetheless, they are 2-0. And so I guess I call them an overachiever in the sense that like they will fall. They will plummet down to earth. In fact, I would argue they're probably I don't even really see them as a playoff team in spite of their 2-0 start. I mean, they barely scraped by two good teams. Um, but I do have them in my overachiever list just because I don't think where they're at right now and how good some people feel about them right now is going to last. Underachievers. Here I have the Chiefs, which is, such an easy, obvious pick for this because they're 0-2. They're going to win games. They're going to make the playoffs. They will figure things out, but they are 0-2. And to be fair, as someone who, I mean, honestly hates the Chiefs, they played two of the best teams in the NFL through 2 weeks. Um, and at least that's how I feel. I think the Chargers, like I said, are a really good team. And the Chiefs, you know, if they had a slightly better first half, they could have very much won that game. So I'm not going to hold that one against them. I didn't see a whole lot of the Eagles game. I know that neither team was woefully impressive on offense, but I know that the Eagles are a very good team. and I'm not going to hold them losing that game against them. They got to figure some things out. Uh, Not having Rasheed Rice or Xavier Worthy is definitely a tough blow, but I think they'll be fine. They have Patrick Mahomes, who coming into the year I kind of was, I don't want to say down on, but it didn't seem like he was just typical Patrick Mahomes, best player in football type of player. I mean, he was coming off of two statistically pedestrian seasons. And obviously they went to the Super Bowl both years, so you think, oh well, who cares? But like in terms of his individual performance, he was not putting up the numbers that we are used to him seeing when we look at him in this almost godlike way of, oh my God, he is Patrick Mahomes, the best QB in the league, one of the greatest of all time. He was not individually playing up to that standard, and specifically last year through a lot of like bonehead interceptions, like not like, oh, they just kind of had a slight miscommunication or it was a tip ball. Like what? Like he interceptions where you're like, what was he doing there? And through 2 weeks this year, even though they're 0-2, he looks like he's kind of gotten past some of those struggles, I guess, if you will. He's not making those mental lapses. He looks like that version of Patrick Mahomes that makes unbelievable plays. Um, so I do think the Chiefs will figure it out, and I do have them as an underachiever because they will. They're achieving less than how good of a team they are. Next on this list, I have the Texans, who I'm actually not that high on. I don't think they're going to be a great team, but I do think they're better than what they're playing. Um, they had a tough loss against Tampa Bay. I mean, Baker Mayfield. What can you say other than he is just a bad man? He is a clutch guy, and he made things happen in that win. And so that was a tough loss for them. And then they lost to the Rams week 1, who I think are a very good team. I think that things go up from here for them. I'm a little worried about CJ Stroud really just not looking like the quarterback we saw in his rookie year. A lot of people are really criticizing him for his basketball dribble warm up. I mean, people thought it was cool when he was doing good his rookie year. I think it's just one of those things where people make such big reactions of, but I don't think it's a contribution to them losing their first 2 games, or people think it's a distraction or whatever it is. It's just a warm up he has. It's something he likes to do. Does he need to, play better and play like that rookie year version of himself? I think absolutely, and he has to figure that out. But I think the Texans will be better. Now, moving on to my MVP ladder, which is insanely early, but you know, it's how sports discourse goes. We're always going to have an MVP ladder. Through the first 2 weeks, my MVP is Lamar Jackson. 514 yards. This is I'm reading off total yards, total touchdowns. 514 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1-1 record. Very, very, very close, crushing week 1 loss against the Buffalo Bills, another very good team. Um, to me, he's the best. He's through 2 weeks, he's been the best player. And the way they lost week 1, albeit he wasn't perfect in the ending, I don't think that's his fault, and I don't think that's why he and should anyone's mind not be the MVP. I have him as my MVP right now. Second on this list, Justin Herbert, 663 yards and 6 touchdowns, 2-0 record, no turnovers. Lamar Jackson also has no turnovers. I cannot say enough about how much Justin Herbert has impressed me through 2 weeks. Just his confidence, and he seems like he's playing almost with a swagger that has not been there before. And again, who knows? Maybe that's because he's dating Madison Beer now. I'm sure. I'll tell you what. I mean, that'd give me some confidence. But he looks really good. He looks really good. The Chargers look really good, and I'm very interested to see where their season goes. Albeit, I hope it doesn't go as well as it continues to go because I'm a Broncos fan. But from an objective football fan perspective, it's been very impressive. Third on this list, And I struggled with this between this guy and who I have fourth, but I did ultimately go with Jordan Love third, who has 496 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2-0 record. This I kind of chalked up more to where I think the Packers will end up. He has been impressive through 2 weeks, but not as impressive as statistically or individually as all the other players on this list. Um, but I do think the Packers will end up being, like I said, I think they're going to make the Super Bowl. And I think they'll probably be the 1 seed in the NFC. So if he continues to play at relatively this rate and they're the 1 seed, then yeah, he's going to be top 3 on my MVP ladder. That being said, the person I have at number 4 could very easily be number 3 ahead of him, but I went with Love over him for the reason I explained, that I do think the Packers are going to be at this spot at the end of the season. I think Jordan Love is going to be at the spot near the end of the season, whereas I don't think my guy at number 4, Daniel Jones, will be in the MVP conversation at the end of the season. 616 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2-0 record, no turnovers. Wow, Daniel Jones. Give it up for Danny Dimes. I mean, come on. And they're 2-0. So, like I said, you could very much argue he should be ahead of Jordan Love. I went with Love third because I think Love has a much higher chance of being here when the season's over. But Daniel Jones, very impressive, man. Very, very impressive. And I was disheartened by how well he did against my Broncos defense. Um, and I mean, I think the Colts will probably make the playoffs. I really would not be surprised if they win their division, given they started off 2-0. The Texans, a team that I would have picked to win their division at the start of the year, is 0-2. I would not be surprised if Indianapolis takes a division. Props to Danny Dimes. Now, we're going to move on to my surprise stars. I do have Daniel Jones on this list, who I just talked about. I mean, I don't think anyone expected this from him. Obviously, before it was announced, a lot of people thought Anthony Richardson was probably going to be the starter. And what a phenomenal decision that's been to not go with Anthony Richardson. Um, the Colts, man, I don't know. There might be something there. They're not going to contend. Like I said, I do think they're overachieving right now, but there might be something there. Next on my list of surprise stars, Travis Etienne. This one in particular kind of irks me because I drafted him in fantasy last year, and this is kind of what I wanted from him last year that he just so did not give me. But Travis Etienne, uh, second in the entire league. Sorry, second in the entire league in rushing yards at 214 yards. No rushing touchdowns, but he has a receiving touchdown. And I mean, he's just looked like that guy, the guy he was 2 years ago again. And I simply was not expecting this out of him. So he is on second on my list of surprise stars. Kudos to you, Travis Etienne. Wish you did this last year, but nonetheless. Third, Quentin Johnston, as I mentioned earlier. Wow, man, some new life has been breathed into him because it kind of seemed like he was really heading on that path of like just a bust of a pick. And I know Chargers fans that strongly felt that way about him. Could not catch balls, would jump too early, um, wasn't a good route runner, wasn't fast. And look at him now, 150 yards, 3 touchdowns, only 8 receptions on the year. But it's been very impressive what he's done so far, catching these deep balls, and just he's looks like he's turning a new leaf. Um, and I think he's probably the biggest surprise. Well, maybe not over Daniel Jones, but like I said, people thought his career was trending in the bad direction of he's going to be a bust. He probably won't be on the Chargers after this year. That was the kind of mindset about him, was they need to figure something else out because he is not going to figure it out. And he has so far. So kudos to him. Kudos to not John, Jim Harbaugh. Kudos to Jim Harbaugh, man. Um, they are figuring it out. He is getting this team to the potential that we've kind of known they've had for some time. Disappointments. This one hurts to say because he's an LSU guy. But Brian Thomas, man, and I was very close to taking him in my fantasy draft, and I would say I'm glad I didn't. But the guy I took instead is also on this list. So, but 19 targets for 5 catches and 0 touchdowns, and not only that, but like week one, I think for the most part it was kind of on Trevor Lawrence. Made some bad passes and just missed them. Week two, I mean, Brian Thomas, like as bad of a performance as you can have from a star wide receiver. Just uh, not catching the ball, not ready for the ball, stop running his route. I mean, just huge mental lapses. And I think in a way it's definitely a confidence thing that probably carried over from a poor week one performance. But man, he has been bad. And one thing I alluded to, I was talking about this with someone the other day. You really look at the production he had last year. It was the substantial, games he had was with Mac Jones. It wasn't with Trevor Lawrence. And it makes you wonder if maybe him and Trevor Lawrence for some reason just don't have that connection, and maybe Brian Thomas isn't that level of a receiver with a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence. I don't know what that says about Brian Thomas. I don't know what that says about Trevor Lawrence, but for some reason they cannot connect in the way that Brian Thomas and Mac Jones could. I cannot tell you why, but it is simply the truth thus far. Um, Next on this list is the guy I took instead of Brian Thomas, is Chase Brown. And oh man, is this one disappointing because he is on my fantasy team and it has been very disappointing to see him underperform. But more than anything, even if I didn't take him, I was so high on Chase Brown coming into this year. And so were a lot of experts and a lot of people. It was they're figuring out the running offense to work it around Chase Brown. They want to involve him more. He finished last year so well. It was Chase Brown, Chase Brown, Chase Brown, all the hype in the world. 37 carries for 90 yards and 1 touchdown. That is, I hate to say it, pathetic. And I'm not super confident it's going to get better with the absence of Joe Burrow. And some people would argue, well, you think they'd go to Chase Brown more. But I don't know if going to him more is the issue. Like he's not getting enough carries. He's not running the ball well. He's got less than 3 yards per carry. I mean, that's not good. Um, and I don't know. I don't know if somehow magically Joe Burrow's absence is going to make things better. I don't see really how it does. I could see him getting the ball more. I don't see how it makes Chase Brown run for more than 3 yards a carry. So he's been very disappointing. I really hope they figure it out. And without Joe Burrow for 3 months, I mean, I have no idea how it's going to go. I have T. Higgins as well in my fantasy league. So that's great. Next on my disappointment list, this one, I want to add context. It's not that he had a huge, mass amounts of hype coming into the year, but I mean, personally, I thought he would do better than he's doing. And not all of this is necessarily attributed to his actual performance. It's Caleb Johnson, who's had 2 carries on the year for -1 yard. And the most notable thing about his year so far is like one of the biggest fuck ups I've probably ever seen with touching the ball on a kickoff and then not grabbing it as it went into the end zone, just giving up a touchdown. Um, I that was unfathomable how you were in the NFL and you make a mistake like that. So that along with 2 carries for -1 yard, and simply just I thought he would be doing better. And obviously, he's only had 2 carries. So it's hard to really come down on him. But I thought he would have done more. I mean, whether or not it's his fault, it is a disappointment to me in my eyes of what I thought he would produce at least through 2 weeks. Um, maybe this changes. I got to say, I can't see him getting more carries with a coach like Mike Tomlin after a mistake like that. So Caleb Johnson, maybe he doesn't deserve to be on this list because he's only had 2 carries. But I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for the kickoff thing, I wouldn't put him here. But that alone, yeah, with all things considered, that puts you on here. Predictions and takes that I have for the rest of the year. I think the Chargers win the AFC West. And I don't think that's so crazy to say because they look really good right now. And the Chiefs are 0-2. And that's not insurmountable by any means. The Chiefs could beat the Chargers twice and make up that gap alone. But I think the Chargers are just a better team than the Chiefs this year. And they look really good. I think the Chiefs will probably finish second. As a Broncos fan, I hate to say it, but I don't see us surpassing them, especially not after. I'll get to that in a second, especially not after this Colts game. So I think the Chargers win the AFC West. And on top of that, I think they make the AFC Championship. That's how strongly I feel about the Chargers this year. We'll see if that holds up. But on September 17th, 2025, Gianni Frangella is putting the Chargers in the AFC Championship game. Book it. My second on here, I have the Buccaneers winning several more games in the fashion that they won their first two, just in nail-biter, thrilling fashion, because their defense is good, their offense is good, but neither of them seem great. But Baker Mayfield is a bad man. He is just clutch, man. He's got that clutch gene. And I know this has been said 1,000 times, but like, God, it feels so good to see Baker be in the spot that he's in and have the success that he's had after how many people gave up on him and thought he was trash. He wouldn't figure anything out. I'm so happy to see the success he's had, and it's not new. Like I said, people have said this before about him, and we came to Tampa Bay, and now he's this real threat. But I'll say it again, man. It is just awesome to see. Such a feel good story every time he does it, and he's on my fantasy team this year, so big Baker guy. But I do think the Bucks win several more games like this. I don't know what the record will be. I think they'll definitely win the division. Well, actually, Atlanta's really good this year. I still take Tampa Bay to win the division, but I think they win several more games like this. And lastly, this is probably my hottest take. I think the Bengals stay afloat until Burrow returns. And what I mean by that, I think they will come out either 500 or a game below and be in a spot for Burrow to come back. Because if he misses 3 months, let's say he comes back week 14 or 15. I think they stay well enough afloat till then to where they can squeak in the last playoff spot. I've looked at their schedule. There are some games they're definitely going to lose, but there's some games on there I'm confident they can win. So I don't have their schedule in front of me. I wish I pulled that up. That would have been smart of me. But you'll have to take my word for it. I think that they can float by, especially because Jake Browning, I know he obviously was not perfect, but as far as backup quarterbacks go, I think they're not in that bad of hands. He made things happen. It's not like they're trotting out, some young guy who's never played or has no experience or can't throw the ball. He makes things happen. So I can see him being good enough to win them games against shittier teams. I think they stay enough afloat to where when Burrow comes back, they can still make the playoffs. And not like they can still make the playoffs like they're not mathematically eliminated. But I think they stay afloat enough to make the playoffs to where when Burrow comes back, they're like, all right, we held it afloat here. Joe, take us home. Those are my predictions and takes for the rest of the year. Before I close this off, that Broncos game. Oh, man. That was as frustrating and gut-wrenching of a loss as I've had in a while. as a sports fan. No, maybe not as a sports fan. There were some rough Nuggets losses. Maybe not even as a Broncos fan, because that Chiefs loss last year. Oh my God. But that was crushing. That was so tough because that might have been the only time as a football fan I cheered in elation that my team had won. Thought in my head, I believe my team had won. The game was over. Oh my God. How do we still win that game after that horrible interception that Bo Nix threw? After that Will Lutz missed field goal? How do we still win that game? We got so lucky. And then I see it says flag. Dude, I cannot explain to you the rage that filled my body. I had to go on a long walk after that and just oh, I was so heated. I was so heated. It wasn't just because of the penalty, but it was the reasons I had just mentioned. We sold that game so unbelievably hard. Bo Nix played great through 3 quarters, threw that horrible interception on 3rd down in the field goal range. All you had to do was not throw a pick, and then we kick a field goal. Next time down, you missed a field goal. Miss like a gimme. I mean, for Will Lutz, a seasoned kicker, that should be a gimme. And I've seen some people complain, like Broncos fans complain, on the Will Lutz missed field goal because they basically could have made the same call of leverage that was made on the 60-yard miss for Indianapolis that ultimately cost us the game. And I get it. I get all of that reasoning. Ultimately, I'm not upset at the refs about this. I'm not going to pin this on the refs. We screwed ourselves. We should have won that game for many reasons. But in the call alone, you make a mistake like that on a play that decides the game, yeah, they're going to call it. And I've seen some people be like, oh, I can't believe these refs interfered on a play like this at the end of the game. They have to. They have to do that at the end of the game. And at the end of the day, it's on the Broncos players that did that to know you can't do that. And it is a 60-yarder by a guy who has never kicked more than, I think it was 40 yards or 45 yards, whatever. He is not making this. And for a 60-yarder, why are you doing this anyway? This isn't Brandon Aubrey. Whoo, man, I'm still so hot about that. That's on the Broncos players. I can understand you think it was nitpicky to make that call. And that, I think you reserve that opinion. You reserve the right to that opinion. But I'm going to blame our team because we should have won that game for several different reasons. We shouldn't have lost. But even in that moment, you have to know not to do that, especially for a 60-yarder from a rookie kicker. Unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. And I really don't think we're going to win against the Chargers this week. So that was a crushing loss. A little worried about the Broncos. But nonetheless, I am Gianni Frangella. This has been a long-awaited episode of The Manager. I don't know who was waiting, but someone was, I'm sure. And I will try and do this every week. Aiming to do this every week. I'm aiming to do this Wednesday of every week. We'll see what happens. Got a busy school schedule this year, but I really want to hunker down and commit to Outlier because I love this stuff, man. I really do. And I will see you next week. Thank you for your time.